All right, everybody. Well, welcome. It's Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month. Happy October, man. Has this year been flying by? And if you think about it, the year is one circulation around the room, one rotation around the sun. So we're what, three-fourths of the way through, starting to move into fall. Beautiful time of the year, other than the hurricanes. And for anybody that was affected by that, our prayers and best wishes for your quick recovery. It was a pretty awesome storm, and it really shows you how powerful, nature is. And, we're connected to nature. And as everybody settled in here, just a couple thoughts on that. One of the things that we found that we become an urban species, an indoor species, so to speak. We literally, our kids spend less than 8 minutes a day outside in nature. And that loss of connection, that human connection to nature and to each other is so important for our well-being. In fact, they find that when you're lonely, increases your risk of stroke, obviously mental health issues. And it's one of the reasons why I do this conscious forum, and that is to help us really make a difference in our lives, and in the ability to communicate. And so, I invite everybody that to these. They're basically designed for us to reconnect as humans and kind of talk about the human condition. We're set up a certain way, and we were designed that way to protect us against danger. But in the modern world we live in, we're not doing too well with it. And so that's what we're about. And so the forum really is literally a place, meeting, or medium where ideas and views on a particular issue can be exchanged. And so what I like to do in these forums is I'll pick a topic, go through that, and then we'll open it up for discussion, and we can share things that are going on in our lives, or observations we have, or questions we have. Because the more we interact, I like to think of it as, in ancient days, if you've ever been to Greece and you've gone to the Acropolis, and you sit up there, you could just imagine Socrates and Plato. I'm not to say I'm them, one of them, but I am somebody that likes to gather like-minded people that want to work on their health and their well-being. And that's kind of my focus, my desire. That's what drives me every day, is to help people really have the opportunity to change their health and their life. And so let's get going. Today, we're going to talk on something that is so critical and so misunderstood. And we're going to give you some insights into that. And hopefully it'll open up a little bit our understanding. So basically, your ego runs the show. Showing your ego who is the boss, that's where true freedom begins. It's when, we think we're free, and we think about the things we see on TV, where you're driving a nice car or living on the ocean. And we say, wow, that's what I want. That'll make me free. But that's really not what makes you free. What allows you to become free is when you can remove yourself and not have your ego be in charge. Because it is in charge. It is literally, it drives all the cogs. And we're going to talk about your thoughts, your feelings. We're going to talk about how the ego works, and it's so tricky and how it works. But it's running the show, and it is literally there right in the middle. And it's telling you what to do all the time. So the question is, oh no, I don't have an ego. I'm shy, or I'm an introvert. That's not what we're talking about. Your ego is your personal mind. It is the thing that you hear all the time. So if we define what the ego is, literally, it is the automatic thoughts, the thoughts that you have. A good time to really start analyzing this, I like to do it myself, is where am I in relationship to my personal mind? Am I awakened? Am I conscious? Am I filtering everything? Good time to start is right in the morning. If you take a shower, if you take a shower in the morning, you get in the shower. The ego has one job while it's in the shower, and that is to regulate the water temperature. That's the purpose of the personal mind, of those automatic thoughts, like, oh, it's too hot, it's too cold, and to adjust that temperature so it's just right? So it's at a temperature that's not going to burn you and not going to make you shiver. Although some people like cold plunges and want to shiver, that's not really my cup of tea. But that's not the subject of today. But that's what your ego is doing. Your personal mind is adjusting the outside environment. And that should be about as far as it goes, is trying to adjust the outside environment. Obviously, we want to make sure we're aware of our surroundings, and put ourselves in surroundings that are conducive to our health and well-being. But bottom line, we have so little control over our surroundings. What's right in front of us, right over here, something else is happening. So the automatic thoughts that come up, Those are the things that are going on. That voice in your head, so to speak, basically, that's your ego. That's your ego talking to, and it's running the show every single day. And it makes up stories, you know. It perceives something happening, you know, you're at work or you're at a party or you say hi to somebody and they don't say anything back, your ego immediately goes to work. It makes up a story. Wow, why is Sue upset with me? You know, and you might even build the story so quickly and be so aggressive that your ego says, no, we're going to go tell her off. And then you run up to Sue, say, you know, Sue, why did you ignore me? And Sue looks back and says, I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about because Sue didn't hear you. And then now you got Sue stuff going, and then her ego's going, and then you're in the what? The drama triangle. It's that prevalent every single moment of our day. And most of the stories it tells you just are not true. And they're your self-concept. So your psyche, your thoughts, your feelings, those are what make up our experiences of life. And we've taken those experiences and we categorize them. It's what causes prejudice. It causes all kinds of things that do not serve us well in the moment based on our past, you know, the issues, the stored negative energy from the past, or the anxiety about the future. All you really ever have, and we've heard it a million times, but your ego is taking that and says, yeah, well, okay, I need to be in the present. And all of a sudden you'll go, oh, yeah, look, I see what's around me. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there's that voice in your head that's running the show. It's telling you everything. So basically, let's look through the process. Something happens, an event, people, you know, just like we talked about. Sue doesn't answer you. Goes in, hits your ego. It doesn't just go in and observe. Like right now, I can, you know, look at, I've got a glass here of basically electrolytes, and I'm looking at it. And for a moment, I'm looking at it and I see it as it is. And I'm not making any notion about it. It's kind of like when you're driving down the road and you have the stripes on the road, you know, you don't pay attention to those. But if it's something that triggers something inside your ego from your subconscious, something stored energy, sometime that you didn't like, and you pushed it down like coiled springs, and it's down in there, and it touches that, immediately becomes a big deal. It comes to the surface, and now you are running with that, right? You are running with that idea, and it's called a cognitive emotive loop. We've talked about that before, where you're thinking something, and then you feel something, and then you feel something, and you think. Pretty soon you got that cycle going. And if you go to bed at night and you haven't properly used the habits of healthy sleeping to set up your room and basically quieted yourself and turned off all incoming stimuli, and something triggers before you go to sleep, man, that cognitive loop hits you. And that's why 80 million Americans in America alone do not sleep well. And that becomes a real issue. So when it hits the ego, the bottom line is creates these automatic thoughts. The automatic thoughts create emotions and feelings, and it's a cyclical pattern of a cognitive emotive loop. And what ends up happening is, depending on whether you actually fully feel it or not, basically you start projecting. So, you know, if we conceal, we withhold, we withdraw, then we project. So if you're projecting or saying something, gossiping or thinking something to someone else, actually that's something going on in you, and you're projecting it because it's something inside of you that you're struggling with, which is a very good thing. So, because what I always hope you do when we do these sessions together is, when you get done, is hopefully you're taking notes and you are basically putting on your lab jacket and your goggles, and you're going to work on this. You know that you need to exercise, that fitness is important, that muscles are important for longevity and for us to be healthy. Your mental health is the same expression. You need to go to the mental gym. The more you spend time working and journaling on this, the more you become aware in the moment of what you're doing. And you literally, we're going to talk about in a little bit here about how we basically fire our ego. How do we do that? And it comes from being aware. And the other thing that happens with our emotions and things is we actually resist the emotion. So when we resist something, by the way, it gets captured inside of us, and now it becomes a trigger for us. Or we cling. If something we really love, we cling to. We all have great memories. It could be childhood memories. It could be a vacation you went on, a situation on a special date night. It doesn't really matter what it is, but something we obsess about and we cling and we try to recreate it. You cannot recreate it. If you went to somewhere in the tropics and had a wonderful time 3 years ago, if you go back to the same place hoping to recreate that, it won't be the same, because your ego, your personal mind has changed. The conditions will be different. The weather may not be as nice. You have a different relationship with your significant other. There's something going on outside at work. Doesn't matter what it is. But bottom line is, whether we resist or cling, these are things that don't serve us. We want to fill, just like you watch the stripes on the road, the dashes on the road, and then you forget about them. That's how anything that comes in should be. You can address something if it needs to be addressed, but you fully express it inside and then you let it go. So critical. And then we suppress things. So we have all the stuff inside of it. So how do you deal with it? How do you deal with your ego? Well, think about it as it's your stored trauma. It is literally the things that have happened throughout your personal mind, your psyche is just the collective experience of everything that you've experienced throughout your life. And most things, basically, some things you have memories of and there's no emotions attached to them, but there's things that were somewhat traumatic. And especially when we're really little, we're not able to process the prefrontal cortex till we're about 5 is not developed. So when something happens emotionally, it gets stored in there and we adapt to it the best we can at that young age. It could be something in relationship with your siblings or your parents or school. I mean, I remember in the first grade, I hadn't thought about this until just now. I, I I forgot to get the memo that you're supposed to learn your ABCs, and I got called on in class. And I remember I didn't know my ABCs, and so I remember that moment being embarrassed in front of the class. And now I processed it a long time ago, but at that time it kind of drove me. It drove me like to go home and make sure first of all I learned the ABCs and I learned the song, A B C D. And then, I resolved it naturally, and then it's kind of gone away. But it's probably somewhere in there. There's probably some things that touch me, even as an adult. And so we need to be aware of those things. And there's our dislikes and our likes. And those are the things that create the preferences that the ego deals with. And it basically runs the show, and it tells you what you shouldn't or what you should do all the time. So we're not looking at the world objectively. Our personal mind, our self-concepts decide on whether we love something or we hate it. And it's really that voice in your head. So that voice in your head is not you. I've said this a million times, but I can tell you your ego has created a story for you saying, yeah, that doctor's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We're one, right? We're in charge. And so let's talk about that. That's really what I wanted to focus on today. So our ego filters everything. What happened and what I'm making it mean that makes you more comfortable with the world around you. So your ego takes everything that comes in, especially our human relational health, and it basically distorts it to make it work for us. So that's going back to Sue. Sue wasn't even involved. Sue didn't even hear you, but Sue inside and said, wait a minute, that's making me look bad, right? So I need to go confront that and make that right. So your ego basically filters that reality and it's going to go make it right. So let's talk about it. So even when you want to work on removing that filter, I mean, I know you guys all think like, we want to do that. Your ego owns you. Your ego owns you. It fully owns you. And it's constantly making demands on you. Like this person, don't say that. Don't wear that. It tells you, it makes 1,000 decisions. It is on you all day long. And here's the deal. You know why you let it get away with that? Because you think it is you. You think that's you. You think your ego is you. Your thoughts, your mind, your feelings, your heart, everything's coming from your heart. You think they're you. And it's got you hoodwinked because it's there 24/7. See, it's been there so long. If you look in the mirror, what you look like when you were 5 or 10 or 15 or 20, and you look at the mirror today, who's looking at you? Your morphology, your morphology changes. As we age, we change. All you have to do is look at old photos and all of a sudden, wow. But the ego has been there from the very beginning. It starts early. It has a protective role, especially when we're young. It's what keeps you from, when you first recognize that the stove is hot and not that you probably touched it or got near it, and your ego registered that as a defensive mechanism. And that's the good part. That's the same thing as reducing or increasing the temperature of your shower in the morning. That's a role that it plays. But it's It's running everything 24/7. Any chance of seeing beyond its control? It's not possible if you think it's you. So if it was not there all the time, right? If it was only there partially, then all of a sudden you change your perspective like that. You'd fire it immediately, right? Just think about it. That voice in your head, that inner voice, that roommate that's in there, the stuff it says to you. If you had a friend that said stuff like that to you, you would kick them out if they were your roommate. You'd kick them out today. So understand and it's not kind to us. That judgment of ourselves, self-worth, worthiness, all these shame, guilt, those are all ego-driven things to put us in our place. And so we think that's us. None of that is us. So how do you fire it? Well, I've been going over this for over 3 years. We've been doing the conscious form. I'm going to use the same photo because it's literally getting out and observing. It's actually removing yourself and asking the questions, who am I? It's the childhood curiosity rather than the need to be right. We're defensive. We're decide that we've got to be right. And that's our ego talking. It puts us in that because that way it thinks it's doing its job. And what we want to do is get out and be curious, have that childhood curiosity on everything. What if the opposite was true? What if what I'm thinking is the exact opposite is true? And that suddenly, all of a sudden, you get away. The ego doesn't want to hear that. It's not going to say, what do you mean the exact opposite is true? We've seen this happen 5 times. This is exactly what's going on. And it's happening again. No, it may not be. It totally may not be. And so that's why we project, we make assumptions. We basically, take it personally. We take everything personally because our ego wants to be the boss. So the first step is getting out and observing. When you observe what your mind says to you and what your heart feels, it is not you doing it. That's that opening. That's the thing that really makes the difference. Someone is watching the mind. If you say right now inside, help, say it inside, help. Okay. So your thoughts created a communication inside. You heard it say help, correct? Who is that heard it say help? That's not you. That is simply basically a thought that's being generated. And understand that most of the thoughts at the subconscious level are from things from the past. They're your ego dialing everything up and creating its preferences so that basically throughout the day, what happens is what you want to happen. I can tell you that is a recipe for struggling continually. As I mentioned, life is intrinsically unstable. We're going to have stuff happen to us. But what happens to us, how we interpret it, how we respond to it, will determine the outcome. That's psychological flexibility. That's what this work is about. Because once we become awakened and we're able to basically see that that's not us, that the ego is there. And by the way, the ego is not going to go quiet into the night. So when you ask, who am I? Who knows this of who I am? That is your consciousness. That is the essence of you. That is you as a true human being without the contrived, manipulative ego trying to create a personal world that works for you all the time. Because if you rely on it, your life's going to be miserable. As soon as you get in a clue of this awakening, it's over. So it's just that glimpse of awakening that who you are has nothing to do with your identity, with your ego, with your job, with the car you drive. And you are sitting there. And once you start to feel that, man, this great awareness comes in. You will feel a rush of energy. And all of a sudden, your perspective will change because you don't get depressed. Your ego gets depressed. Your thoughts create that. You are the pure energy that's there that are now manipulating the world to create a situation that then causes you to feel that certain way. But once you have it, it's over. I like to call it the realization. And the first thing you're going to do, just like, I think it was on The Apprentice. I never watched it, but you're fired, right? You are fired. You're going to fire the ego. I don't have to put up with any of this anymore. I don't have to put up with all your nonsense, with all that continual gibberish, and it becomes a moment of enlightening. And then the rest of it is you commit yourself to getting out for good. I don't have to put up with this anymore. Now, we're not going to talk about that part today. I will just kind of set you up for it because I want to open it up for questions. Because the first thing is, listen, it's not going away. It's not like, they brought in the exterminator and killed all the cockroaches and then they're out of your house. They come back. I live in Florida. I have to come do that every single month. They use a non-toxic one for pets and stuff, but they do it. And I actually literally the other day, I don't very seldom see them because they do such a good job. There was a cockroach down in my lower level when I went to work out. He was dead as a doornail. It was right out in the middle. So obviously what they're using is working, but they come back. And your ego is been with you your whole life. So it's not going to go, it's not like, oh, okay, I recognize what Dr. A is saying today. And yeah, I'm not going to pay attention to it anymore. It's not that easy. It's going to require a lot of work. And we're gonna spend time next month going over it. But bottom line is for now, what I would love you to do is just start noticing when your preferences come up and ask yourself, why do I have that preference? Who is that me? Is that really what I want? Or is that something that my ego is set up telling me what to do here? Because, I mean, I'll give you an experience. I was out with some friends last month in Vail, and bottom line is they're out in the middle of the beautiful creek. We were bike riding. It was the creek, and there was a rock. And so they were sitting on the rock, and all of a sudden, a little black water snake came by. And man, they just freaked out. They just freaked out. I jumped out, and we're on top of the rock. And I said, just relax. It's gone now. And so it took about 10 minutes. I mean, it's okay to, oh, there's a snake. I don't know if that snake's dangerous. So for the first 90 seconds to be scared is a good thing. Getting up on the rock, let's say, I mean, there's no water moccasins in Colorado, but bottom line, it's not a bad thing that you responded that way and got up. And then that fear in about 90 seconds should have gone away. But no, for the rest of the week, this person didn't want to get near the water. Okay. That's a neurosis. That's beyond, that's where your ego now is overreactive. So I'm going to use that as an example because there's so many things we might want to do because it was hot. It was really hot, in Colorado in the summertime like that. And I was in the creek, going down and getting in the creek, which felt so good after a long bike ride. And they wouldn't get in the creek. And so that's your ego telling you, no, you're not going to do something which is inappropriate. So that's a good example. We all have those things in our life. And so that's a good way to start. I just love for you, over the next 3 or 4 weeks is to spend time really sensing when your ego's done something and it's really overreacting, because that is not you. Those are thoughts you're having, those are feelings you're having, and they're not serving you. And it happens day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. It affects your relationships. It affects your ability to do your job. It affects your health dramatically. If just for that reason, because I'm all about having us live ultra health and live a longer, healthier life. Emotional mismanagement, allowing that to get out of line, is the leading cause of death in the world. And I don't know anybody else that says that, but I am convinced. I'm absolutely convinced. In fact, if you look at our life expectancy, well, I'll take one last example just to show you, because this is one that may drive home to you. So, most of the time when you want to eat, are you really hungry? Is your body really signaling you're hungry? Well, sometimes it is. And we know that if we drink lots of water, that helps, because a lot of times, about 30% of the time or so, when we think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty. So we're missing the sensation. But most of the time, when you want to eat, it's not that you're hungry. It's that your ego, your personal mind, is that it has no discipline, by the way. It doesn't want to, that'll be the part we'll talk about next month, is really separating and having yourself, things that you want in your internal, your intrinsic, your deep valued self, do things, and not letting your ego intervene. Because when you get up in the morning, you may not want to get up, but basically, and if it's on the weekend, you were going to work out, but you sit home. So getting back to the eating, so most of the time your ego just decides, your mind decides, or your feeling is, I need something to eat. And this happens with emotional eating, which we all know about. And think about it. Your ego, your mind doesn't have a mouth. It doesn't have an alimentary canal. It doesn't have a stomach, duodenum, small intestine, large intestine. It doesn't have a colon. It doesn't have any of those things, but it's telling you what to do. So think about that. It is fully, completely in charge to the point it's ensconced in you and you think it's you. And so these little clues, and that's the tip, that's your work for this month is to literally sense when it's telling you what to do and just say, time out, buddy, time out, you, time out, her. It's a her or he, or it might be something else. I don't know. But whatever it is, tell it time out. In this case, I'm going to remove the filter, and that's kind of how we'll end it. And we'll just work on this. There is no one giant step, but lots of little ones. And your ego is the toughest critter because you think it's you. And until you create that separation, that's what awareness is. That's what conscious witness means. It means that you step away and you see this mind, this ego, this psyche, these thoughts, these feelings that are basically running the show. And you just decide, time out. I'm not going to let you do it. So that's what moves from this filtered where, it's been called many things. It's the cogs going on. I think some people call it monkey mind. It doesn't matter. But it's all this going on inside versus the pureness of being unfiltered, where you can enjoy a beautiful sunset fully in its presence without linking it, clinging to something. Oh, I remember when that happened 4 years ago when I was with my honey or my best friend, or instead you just fully be aware in the moment and associate it with warmth and great feelings. There's nothing wrong with that, but understanding the difference between being fully run by your ego and now being run by you, your consciousness. So again, going back, I'd like to end with this. What we're talking about is building internal stability so you can handle anything. And that's kind of how I look at it when I'm working with people, or talking to people, with my kids, with my mom, my family. Can you handle it? And the reality is you can handle anything. I mean, even, I like to use Viktor Frankl. He lives in a concentration camp, and he could handle it. He handled it. And he had the worst external outside world. His family was killed. He was in a concentration camp. They took away his manuscript. He was skin and bones, but he could handle it because he built in that resolve and he focused on what was most important, the essence of who he was, that inner real voice, not this chatty Cathy, but basically this inner deep sense, instinctual sense of who I am and what my journey is and where I want to go in my life. And what that does is that allows external equilibrium. You then become able to help all the people around you, your loved ones, your friends, your community, the people you work with, and you allow to build in that external stability so that you have the balance between. When that happens, the word equanimity has been used. In essence, what that means is you can handle it. I have the psychological flexibility, and I am able to take whatever happens, deal with it. Not that we don't have emotions. Hey, I love going with to Universal. I love riding the roller coaster because I like to get scared for a few moments, but the ride's over in a couple minutes. You get off and you go, wow, I felt alive. That really felt good. Boom, and then it's gone. And I don't have any residual like, oh, I was so scared. I'm not going to get on the roller coaster again. So hopefully that makes sense. Some good food for thought. Let's go ahead now and open it up for questions. So let me stop the share. All right, Rachel, we got some questions.
Yes, we do. First up, we have Phyllis. Phyllis, can you come on camera?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can. We can.
Okay,
just
great.
can't see you.
Thank you, Dr. A, for this wonderful information. My question is, do you have a specific process that you'd recommend for eliminating sabotaging beliefs?
Well, we're going to talk about that. The answer is it's it's what we just talked about. Just know that your sabotaging beliefs are self-concepts. They are your ego. They are
Right.
they are things inside of you, and there's multiple different reasons for them. It could be, one of the things we see with people that are, pretty overweight is that that's a shielded them from having to deal with relationships. And so, that's conceptually could be one of them. And there's a million of them. And what they are is a part where you've created a scenario where you want to stay in your comfort zone because it's understood. See, and it's an amazing question, Phyllis, because yeah, I can't see you, just so you know, by the way, but that's okay if you don't want to show. but I just want to make sure you knew that. So bottom line is, so your ego is set up these scenarios. There you are. So your ego has set up these scenarios where it wants to keep things the same. See, your comfort zone is your ego saying, oh, today I don't need to work very hard, right? I don't need to work that hard today because everything is the same. I figured all these out. I have a scenario. I know if I eat at the same restaurant, I know what I like, right? I know if I stay in this area and don't move out of it. So they're excuses. Those sabotage. You're sabotaging yourself because it's an excuse so that you don't have to grow. Because and here's the bottom line. This is one of the things that I become so aware of, and working with some of the Jungian psychologists and reading some of Carl Jung's work. We have a tendency to create preferences and to do that on purpose because we want to stay the same, right? We don't want to have to change. And so we have identity that we created of who we are. We then say, this is my environment, and this is the environment I want to be in. And then so anytime we get out of it, basically we struggle. And so we self-sabotage ourselves so we don't have to address it. Because the key thing is courage. Being able to grow and move takes care of courage. And it's putting your ego and saying, wait a minute, ego is saying to you, hey, no, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this because it's kind of scary, right? I don't want to grow. And by the way, what they found, if you look at people as they age and on their journey, especially in the second half of their journey, there's a bifurcation of people that age and become old, and people that age and become young or stay young or even get younger. And by the way, I'm one of those. And the reason why, every day, just like doing this, I learned so much from doing this. Every day, I want to be curious and I want to grow. I want to become more. I want to continue to learn. And when you're curious and you want to learn, boom, you just dial right into nature to whatever spirituality is for you, whether it's your faith or true, you're a spiritual person, you're connected to this amazing thing called life and who we are. When you're on that track, it does stay scary. But you know what? It gets, because it's not about you, it's about what you're learning and growing and becoming and creating. It becomes just this amazing journey. And when you're curious like that, it really helps. So, we kind of hinted on some of the things we can do to get out of that egoic, psyche, that personal mind that keeps us stuck, keeps us sabotaging ourselves. And most important part is find things you're passionate about. I'm all about intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is simply find something you're passionate about, something you want to learn, and something that you want to share with others. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. 20 years ago or 25 years ago, as a critical care physician, I didn't know any of this. I mean, I was really good at what I did, and I trained with the best in the world. I trained with the best facility at Jackson Memorial. I got lots of experience learning how to take care of sick people. I learned the best technology. But man, I was a bear to work with because that ego drove my learning and my growth. And that's okay in that role. It's kind of like in the military. It's not the time to be touchy-feely. You better know your job or people die. Or if you're a pilot, you better know your job when you're in bad weather. So there's things to be said for that. But the reality is the work that I've done has changed everything in my life, changed the relationship with my children, the way, I lost my wife and how I've been able to not cope, but actually grow from that and have a beautiful relationship with her, although she's not here, not feel grieved or a victim. It's all about understanding that, find out what's most important to you and then go after it. Go after it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got this. You got this. You do have it. And remember when you have that self-doubt or that sabotage coming in, go, time out, buddy, or her, whoever what you want to call your ego. Hey, you're not having anything to do with you today. I'm going after what I want.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Great.
All right, next up we have Cinda. Cinda, are you there? I knew she was having connection issues, so we might need to move on to the next one. Let's go ahead and move. Oh, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Cinda, how are
I'm doing great, Dr. A. I got disconnected on my laptop, so I had to connect on my phone.
you? Well,
So,
that's, you know what? That's being flexible. That's adaptability. That's a good sign. And that's why, by the way, you're one of those people as we chronologically get older is getting younger. And I love that about you.
woohoo! Well, I want to get even younger because I turned 75 in July, and as Dave Blanchard says, he's working on getting his age younger than he physically is, and I'm
Yeah,
doing the same, right?
I love that. I love that. And you know, by the way, it's here. It's all here. You know, it's all here. And you're a beautiful example of it. So what can I help you with today?
Well, I want to retrain my brain to connect memories of negative experiences that from my childhood and my adult life. They were both physical and verbal abuses that I experienced from my family that sneak into my brain and eventually take control. And when they take control, I lose the ability to live healthy.
Okay.
And I want to find a way to convert those negatives into a positive and use them for power.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying. I've got a much simpler way. First of all, stop trying to have a better past. Second of all, basically when you have one of those feelings come up, experience the feeling, let it come up right then and relax. Instead of trying to grab it and harness it and turn it to something else, it's in the past. You know, you said you're turning 75.
I am 75. I turned 75 in July.
Okay. All right. So you're 75. So these are things that happened in your past, maybe all the way back to like, you know, let's say you were 5 years old, right? Somewhere around there. Or 10, you know, somewhere. Anyway, it was like over 60 years ago, right? Correct? She froze on me.
Darn.
You're back. You're back. You're back.
Okay.
Okay, so that happened over 60 years ago, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I was well, I
Doesn't
was
matter.
called Jim until I was 13.
Okay. Okay.
And I
Okay,
was
so that's
beaten repeatedly. Right.
okay. All right. 60 years ago, something happened. You are nowhere near the same person. You have gone through 60 plus years of evolution. You basically are curious, you want to grow, you want to learn. Don't try to fix yourself. There's no need to fix yourself. Those are simply things from the past. And now you understand the mechanism. Remember, I want to go back to this, what we talked about today, because this will really help you. Your psyche, your ego is there. And when it gets triggered by something, it comes up. And what's happening to you is, Cindy, you're finding that you're getting more and more free of your past, and you're much more enjoying life, and you're putting your ego on the sideline sometimes. Okay. So this is an opportunity for your psyche to come back. It wants to take control. It's excited, but you don't want anything to do with what happened 60 years ago. Doesn't matter. It has no relevance today at all. Zero relevance. Not a thing. And so what you're doing now is you're experiencing moving forward all the beauty of life. And you know what? At the time, your parents were doing the best they could do with what they had. And leave it at that. There's no need to fix ourselves. And your only role is to allow that stuff that's in there to come up and come out. Because what those are is stored energy that blocks your energy flow. We all have energy. We have this amazing flow of energy. You know when you feel it, and some of the cool things you've been doing, and all of a sudden you feel this exude this just feeling of God, I'm so glad I'm alive. I've lived 75 years and I want to live to be 100 because I love life. Versus, a lot of people your age are in nursing homes and they dread every day, and they get up and they're depressed and they're on all kinds of antipsychotics and antidepressants and medications, and they can't get out of bed. And you are wildly alive. So when one of those things, the ego's just sitting there thinking, Cinda's having maybe a little tired today. Maybe she didn't sleep as good last night. I have an opportunity here. And something happens in your environment that triggers one of those ancient stored energy patterns. Instead of resisting it, instead of pushing it back down, fully embrace it, let it come up. And whether it was fear, sadness, the 5 basically feelings you can have, let it come up and just, and then accept it, and have gratitude that your parents were doing the best they could do, and let it go, because it has no power over you. As long as you take radical responsibility and you're fully in charge, it has 0 power over you. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
You don't need to convert it into energy. You need to release it, and then this amazing energy that is you, Cinda, will just come up, and you will be able to fully be in the flow of that, and you'll just be amazing. It's all in there. All of that energy is in there. You're not trying to convert negative into positive. You are literally, when it gets, the triggers are still there. You don't want to cope with it. That's what people, oh, I'm coping with. No, you want to hit it straight on, relax, kind of even in your position, your mental position, accept it, relax, accept, and let it flow out of you. And each time you do that, its power over you becomes less and less, and the pure joy that is you comes out. Does that make sense?
Oh, cool. Yeah, absolutely. So that means I'll be going on the Camino again next year.
I love that. I love that sentence. All right. Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Who else we got?
All right, next up we have Jill. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Jill.
Hello. Good afternoon, Dr. A, and thank you for taking my question.
Yeah.
My question for you is, how do I continually shush the noise in my head and remain above the line while dealing in real life, real time, with the cutoff culture? And by that, I mean my oldest daughter has cut me out of her life, not allowing me to see my grandchildren, which the oldest at 17, I raised her from birth because mom didn't really want to be a mom. So I stepped up, and we have a relationship. My granddaughter and I have a relationship that's beautiful. She's connected to me, and now she's no longer able to see me. I found myself about a year ago in a deep, dark hole. And I was starting to put up the pictures, bring in furniture, and I was comfortable in that hole. Until one day, I couldn't even do a common everyday task on the computer. It took me 6 tries. And I had a come to Jesus moment in my living room where I sort of stomped my feet and said, okay, I am done. I cannot continue this. And so I had a little meeting with the Lord. I'm a believer. And I told him I didn't like his plan. I don't understand your plan, but I'm going to trust it because I believe your ways are greater than mine. So yes, I can tell myself that at the time, but every once in a while, that stinking Lois in my head, she tells me I wasn't a good mom. I don't deserve to be a grandmother. And I found that it's seeped over into my health because it's affected my self-worth. And so I have sabotaged my health at times, only rising to the level of my self-worth. And I'm doing much better. And my circle of friends would say that. But I was wondering if you could add to that and give me some advice that perhaps I'm not doing right now.
Well, thanks, Jill. Thanks for sharing that. And again, I'm not a psychotherapist. If you feel the need, if it gets to the point where, like you said, you're paralyzed and what you can do and can't do, certainly, a psychotherapist, can be a great value. These meetings are really for us to just kind of work on ourselves and understand, knowledge is power, and also giving you some techniques to work on. It sounds like, like you had your own realization. And so let's talk about that for a minute in relationship to what I talked about earlier, because everything you said is dead on. First of all, you can't get anybody to do anything. Okay, that's right. So you can't get your daughter to do anything. She's projecting on you her stuff. Okay. And even though this is hard, don't take it personally. It's not about you. That's the first thing. Second thing is you have a great relationship with your granddaughter. Your granddaughter's 17, so just physically and not trying to solve the problem because that's not, my role. But in a year, she's going to be a free, either, going to college or going, and she'll be able to see you on her own. So that part, don't worry. That's gonna resolve itself. But the one thing is, so that's your external world right now. And this is a really good example of things that are happening in your external world, which basically really bother you. And that is the relationship within your family. And so before you weren't able to cope with it. And so it turned you in, and your ego said, your personal mind, your psyche started feeling these mental feelings. These mental thoughts and these feelings. And it put you to the point where you were so tied up in that cognitive motive loop. The reason why you couldn't do things on your computer, and if you've ever looked at any of my work, your basic limbic system, your amygdala, which is the area that basically perceives threats and protects you, which is the in the middle part of your brain, had hijacked you. The neural tripwires of that had hijacked you, and you couldn't even use your prefrontal cortex. So that's kind of like when I show someone in the you have a beautiful moving water that's calm, which is your steady state when you're not letting your ego create these cognitive motive loops. And then you have the rocks. The rocks are those concepts, those self-concepts. Those are, like you said, your worth. All those are
Right.
conceptual. And when you're in the rapids and you're basically paddling like crazy, you can't deal with that. And you saw that to the point where you couldn't even work on a computer. So just like that little boy I show sitting there, during those periods, just actually stop. You heard me say it a million times, challenge why you're feeling that way, and then decide not to choose the outcome that you want, right? And that outcome is, I'm going to let this pass, let it go through its cycle. And whether it's, frustration is basically fear, anxiety is fear, figure out, try to label which emotion it is. And then in that moment, feel it through. Feel it all. Don't try to push it away. Don't say, oh, I am worthy. Don't rationalize with your ego, because your ego doesn't want anything to do with it. And your ego is not you. Okay. So just in it, realize, oh, that's my ego. That's my thoughts. That's my feelings. Once again, coming up and trying to take over the show. Because it likes that. It wants to push you back. See, when it's got you depressed, sitting in your home, not going out, it's in charge. It says, whoa, this is easy. I don't have to go out and even meet the world now. I don't have to deal with these things. I can sit here in my own self-loathingness and feel sorry for myself and be all the way down in the drama triangle. And by the way, the idea, I want to be really clear, because people, I think, sometimes misinterpret it. The idea is not to go below the line. We all go below the line. And if your daughter says you can't see your granddaughter, who is the love of your life, you're going to be upset about it. And there's nothing wrong. You are going to go below the line, but it's to realize that I'm unhappy, I'm sad, which is the pure feeling. I'm sad for 90 seconds. And then I let that go. And then I say, okay, now I'm going to go on with my day. Because if you start building that loop where you're thinking and feeling, and it starts growing inside of you, it leads to what happened to you. You got depressed. And that is not you. I want to be so clear. I mean, there's clinical depression done because we have chemicals that are wrong, and those are the people that truly have that need psychotherapy. But for most of us, really, they're just our thoughts and our feelings taking over, and our ego trying to put us back in our place. It wants you to be in charge. It wants you to be tended on, and it wants you thinking that it is the show. So just that brief, like you said, you're getting better at it. So getting better at it means there are times when you're telling your ego, no, I'm sitting here. This is good. Like just feel as we talk how you feel. You feel better, because what we're doing is, for a moment there, we're kind of because you're talking directly to me. Your ego is kind of over to the side here, and rather than listening to your ego, which I hate to say, well, not hate to say, because the more we know this, is mostly wrong.
Yeah.
It was wrong about Sue not being mean to you. It's wrong about your granddaughter not liking you, or now that you're not worthy, or it's wrong about that you're a bad mom. If you have a great relationship, your daughter. And by the way, When you had your daughter, you weren't where you are now. You were
Right.
doing the best you could do with what you had. And listen, we're all in that place. We're all humans, and we are in the human condition. And the human condition is one. Why do we have the seven deadly sins? Because they're the shadow part of us, the dark side of us that we all have, right? They're why people do the ridiculously bad things they do. They're always there, and what socialization is about, and what basically understanding is about. So that if you think about it, it's as simple as, hey, we need to pay attention to red lights, right? Because if we didn't pay attention to red lights, think about every intersection. It'd be nonstop chaos. We need to also pay attention that a lot of that stuff that your ego has up there, it's trying to stay in charge, and it's saying, oh, you weren't a good mom, that's why your daughter's like that. Your daughter is not the way you want her to be, because your daughter's not the way you want her to be. It has nothing to do with you. And you were doing the best you could when you raised her. Would you do it differently now? Maybe. But again, stop trying to have a better past. You have no control over the past. You can take the things of the past and you can now reconfigure them to serve, kind of like what Cinda was talking about, so that they work for your future. I know that my relationship when I was a kid, when my relationship with my relationship with my mom now, she's 92, is the best it's ever been. Why? She hasn't changed, but we used to go like this on certain things. And now I went down here and now this happened. And now we're, and I have an incredible relationship with her. I love being with her. That wasn't always so because I did the work. So that same thing with your daughter, with your granddaughter, you're doing the work which will help those relationships become better because you're not putting up with the nonsense. You're not getting, so what you don't want to do, it's okay that you go below the line for a moment as long as you catch yourself and then say, you know what? I'm basically, up for the challenge. I'm not going to be the villain. I'm going to challenge maybe some of those things. I'm basically going to now basically grow and learn and become more become empowered versus basically enable that. I'm not going to be the hero. I'm not going to try to save my granddaughter. I'm simply going to be the complete grandmother that I've always been and share the love. And over time, believe me, things will improve because you're no longer letting the events of your life control the outcome of how you behave. And you have full control over that. Cool?
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Awesome. All right. Who's next, Rach?
All right, next up we have Sarah.
Hello.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hey, Dr. A. I'm good. This talk has been so good today.
You've muted yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been such a good talk today. I feel like it's been such a good reminder of really just viewing how much I've been allowing my ego to run the show. And so thank you. Thank you for showing up as always. I just had a quick question. So
Yeah. By the way, before you give your question, I just want to say something to what you just said. We all have our ego running the show. Let's be really clear. So don't say, oh, and don't shame or blame. I just want to make sure. Don't shame or blame yourself because that's your ego talking. Those are the thoughts of your ego. It's and then what it's doing is that's having you be the villain because your ego wants you. See, as soon as it gets you down in the drama triangle, as soon as it gets this thoughts and these emotions going, boom, it's back in charge. It's so happy. Yeah, I got her. I tricked her. And it's going to trick you. It's a trickster. It's going to try to do that all the time. So when you said that's what stop, challenge, and choose its very essence is, it's that when you start feeling that icky sauce, something that's been triggered mostly from your psyche, mostly at a subconscious level, something from your past that you dealt with, and it's trying to come up and your ego's trying to use it to basically say, oh, I'll make you feel better. We'll feel sorry. Let's go have a bowl of ice cream. Let's go, and it's all BS. It's not even real. So as soon as every day. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt your question. I just want to make sure that you totally understand Yeah, your ego, we all have that. And I catch myself all the time. Hey, listen, it's been there since you can remember it. Your psyche, your personal mind, your self-concepts, they were developed very early on, very early on. And as a result of that, it's hard to separate yourself. And we're going to spend the next time to really talking about that. So hopefully you'll get everybody, because it's a lesson for us all. It's a thing I do all the time now, and I reinforce it. So what's your question?
Yeah, thank you. That was honestly so intuitive of you to like pick up on that shame and guilt from me just saying like a sentence, because it's true. I have been in that place, that icky, sticky, whatever place. But my question was, I have a mentor who often says this quote. He says, "My ego is my amigo." And I just wanted to hear what your opinion was and if you agree with that in any way. Because I think a lot of times people view the ego as like a monster almost.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And it's the same thing with the shadow. You know, people talk about the shadow, and it's always it's some of our tendencies that are not necessarily positive, but it's just like the ego. The ego is your amigo if you're using your ego appropriately. So let me put that in perspective. When you're young, your ego is in service of you, right? It helps protect you. It helps, correct the temperature. In things that you don't understand, it self-soothes you. It creates security for you. Like for myself, early on, I had a pretty strong intensity about myself, and wanted to be the best physician I could be. I wasn't really interested in, I graduated first in my class. I wasn't really interested in that. When I finally got into what I loved, and that's what I always say to people when they're struggling a little bit or stuck, find something you're in love with. And I was in love with medicine. I remember when I went to medical school, I studied all the time. And it's really cool because my daughter, Erica, is becoming a vet. She just started vet school, and she's studying. Actually, last weekend, she had her white coat, and she said, "Dad, don't come because I'm going to be studying all weekend." She found what she's in love in it, and I have no doubt, and she's making great grades and better grades than she did in college because she's in love with it. It's connected to her soul. Okay. So when you're young, your ego is your amigo from the standpoint is it helps you stay focused on the things that are important. It helps build self-efficacy. All those things are good, right? Helping positive self-talk, but as you become older and you now go into the second part of your life, your ego is in service of your soul. And so your ego is always your companion. Its role dramatically changes. So my ego now is the things that were important to me, talking in front of 20, 30,000 people, as a physician, being honored, those things aren't very important to me. I really don't spend much time even thinking about those. I really now, my ego is in service of my soul, which is to do this work. When I get off this call today, I feel absolutely full, and my ego, basically by spending the work, preparing last night, preparing for this, putting together those slides, spending the time in preparation is something that brings me great joy. I'm in love with that. So, and my ego's involved in that. It's basically supporting that, but it's supporting the bigger mission, right? The mission of me being connected. And our transformation is moving from our self-interest to our common interest, which is our relational health. And our ability to help make a meaning. One of the key things is basically being connected to everything, right? Knowing that we're part of something bigger and that we're going to leave a legacy and that we're doing something that we're involved in. So yeah, no, I totally agree with him. But the perspective, the paradigm evolves. See, your ego was important when you were 5. You cried when you were. It could take you all the way back just to show you how absurd it is. When you were a year old and you had a poopy panties, you cried, right? Or 6 months old. I don't know. Forget how old. But anyway, you would cry, and your mom or your dad or someone, your grandmother would come clean your panties. So you found out that your ego, by being whiny and complaining, was in charge. Well, obviously, some people, when they're 60s, 70s, and 80s, are still like that because they haven't evolved their ego. Does that make sense? So yeah, your ego, what I'm saying is and when I talk about ego, I'm talking in relationship. It does things for you. Your personal mind, having concepts, knowing the stove's hot, knowing that the ego needs to make an adjustment on the shower. Those are parts of your personal mind, memories, things you know that you do automatically that are helpful. Knowing to put your keys, come in and think, put my keys right by where I go out to my car. Those are all things that your ego does. And then as you evolve and you realize, what we teach kids, because if you think about it, their ego's fully about them. So when kids are in kindergarten, just to tell you how all this goes, when you're in kindergarten, remember the golden rule, do unto others as you do unto yourself. Remember, that's the first rule. Because until that point, your ego is just saying, no, I'm fully in charge. I only care about me. I don't care about anybody else, right? So we start learning and evolving to the point where now our ego's in service of our soul, which is really the true legacy, the things that bring us joy. It's again what we saw that Edna's doing. Basically, she's enjoying life, she's curious, and she's doing something that she loves to do. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, we really are out of time. If we have someone that has a short question, if not, we can make sure, Rachel, that we keep them. Yeah, I love that someone just said kids are not non-age specific. That's absolutely, and actually, I wouldn't burden kids by saying kids are a bad thing, because kids are, by in their true nature, they're in joy, they're curious, they're in childlike wonder. I mean, just watch them. I watch them at the pool, and they go nonstop, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're out and they're asleep. So being a child at 80 is good. Having an ego-driven, narcissistic, it's all about me. I'm in charge in the world. That's not a good thing, right? The thing is to be fully cognizant and awakened, so that you're able to experience life without having to connect it and filter it to something from your past or anxiety about the future, because we have no control over those. So anyway, love you guys, and I'll see you next time.